Look in the sky. You can see the horses and the chariots, they ride out.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Israelite Nation YouTube channel. My name is Natasha.
And I am Micah.
And welcome to our Friday night Bible study. So today we wanted to talk about the qualities of a great man and what makes a great man. And also more specifically speak about, how a great man isn't always a perfect man. So Micah, what do you think makes a great man?
For me, a great man is a leader. A great man is someone that is respectful and can treat people with treat people the same way as they would a family member or something along those lines. Just really the way that you treat people really reflects on the type of person that you are. I feel personally, you could judge people a lot by the way that they just communicate with strangers. I feel like that is a great part of being a great man. Maybe another thing that could make you a great man is your strength and and your perseverance. I think the amount that the world can put on you and is a lot, and if you have the resilience to hold all that and still continue to go on, then I feel like that in itself can make you a great man. But those are obviously not the only things that make you a great man.
Mm-hmm. I think also when I think of the qualities of a great man, I think also about somebody that's honest, somebody that keeps their word. Mm-hmm. I know when we were speaking before, you said somebody that's empathetic. Somebody that has what we call it good understanding, but and I guess even good judgment, that kind of goes hand in hand.
Right.
And all of those qualities, and I'm sure there's others that we're not saying at the moment, that's not coming to mind, but all of those things make up a great man. When I think of the men in the Bible that we read about, or the men in my life that I'm this is a great man, and if I was to write out my life story, this person would have a significant place in it.
Right.
Those qualities come to mind. Somebody that's compassionate and caring, and those kinds of things all kind of add up to what a great man looks like, or I perceive to be a great man in my head.
I feel like a man that can change, I feel like makes a great man as well. I feel like if you're stagnant in the way that you think or the way that you perceive the world, that could hinder your ability to make honest and good decisions. Mm-hmm. So I feel like if you are able to look at a situation and change with that, then that not only makes you a good man but a good person. Mm-hmm. Because not everybody can be stagnant. Take old white people, for example. Okay, let's be specific. Old white racist people, for example. Mm-hmm. They could be stuck in their ways and the way that they were raised up, mm-hmm. and project that onto their kids, but mm-hmm. They're living in a different time now, you know what I'm saying? That those are millennials or Gen Z, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That's a world of change, a world of fast-paced things. They have the internet, you know what I'm saying? Everything is changing around them, but they are still caught in their prior beliefs, mm-hmm. or ideologies or whatever. So I feel like anybody before like 1950 can't be a great man, can't do it. But yeah,
I think maybe in their time they could have, I guess, maybe not specifically
right.
older white men, but you could be a great man in your time and then be looked back at and be like, nah, maybe that wasn't so
right,
great of you.
Right.
But going back to what you were saying about being able to change, I think another quality of a great man, and we're saying great man, but this could apply to women as well.
Right.
But another great quality would be self-awareness. Because you could be just doing things and be like, oh, I'm doing this because so and so told me that this was a good thing to do,
Right.
Or this is like, you know, something that I'm supposed to do, but being like self-aware and like, you know, even when you mess up, because, you know, not every man is perfect in their ways, but even when you mess up, being like, hey, you know, this is, you know, where I messed up. I'm aware of it. I understand where I messed up. I understand how I handled that situation incorrectly, and how I could have handled it better, or whatever the case may be. And being, you know, aware of your actions, and not only aware of how that affects other people, but how that affects you. Because sometimes you can make a mistake or do something that, you know, hinders your own growth. So like say, you know, I go out and I decide to rob a bank today. Now I'm going to jail, and I've just, you know,
Right.
I've set myself in the same place for 5-10 years. I don't know how long that sentence would be, but 5-10 years, because now I'm stuck in jail, and I don't have the opportunity to grow anymore.
Right.
Right. So can you think of like any examples of a great man today? You know, whether that's like in media or in your family or.
So, when I think of family, well, not family. When I think of when I think of a great man, the one of the first things that comes to mind is immediately a big member of my family, Elder Shadrach Porter, the leader of the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries. Just his journey, and his experiences and his adaptation, you know what I'm saying? His willingness to mold. Adaptability.
There you go.
Yeah. His willingness to change with the flow of time, and his ability to take this book and to understand it the way that nobody else could understand it at the time, and being able to share that with other people, share that gift with other people. That in itself is a very difficult thing to do, because imagine being the only person that knows the truth while everybody is blind, and trying to explain to somebody like, hey, this is a black man that they're trying to speak about. You know, he came from the dirt, and so this makes a black man. He was made in the image of God, and you know what I'm saying? All these different things that he can continue to gain all the knowledge as you read the book, and sharing that out with other people is a burden, is really, because having all that knowledge by yourself could really do a number on your mental state, especially because of the time that he was in. Not everybody was as polite as they would be today, maybe, about especially religious things, because a lot of people were heavy Christians back then, you know, and very strong in their beliefs, and it could have escalated to violence. It could have escalated to very strong words, strong language, you know. And he took all of that, and he said, you know what? I'm going to continue on this path because I know that it is the truth, and I know that I'm doing God's work. And I feel like that's what made him a great man, his perseverance and his strength through all of that. Yeah. But
I totally agree with you.
Yeah. I was going to say, with social media, I can't really put that same type of emotion out there, because I feel like when I look at celebrities or idols or anything like that on the internet, it's hard to put the pin on, like, you are a great man, put the verification mark, you know what I'm saying, that you're a great man, because with the internet and how social media is today, everybody has to put on that mask, and everybody has to paint themselves as, oh, I'm doing this charity because I'm a great man. I am giving to this Make-A-Wish Foundation because I'm a great man. You know what I'm saying? So I can't really do it with 100% accuracy, like say, okay, you are great because you are doing these acts, because I don't know if it's a selfless act because they are compelled to do it because they are great, or because they're trying to put up a front because of what is it called? HR? No, what's it called? But yeah,
I know what you're trying to say.
Yeah. But like appealing to the people, you know what I'm saying? They're a group that appeals to the people. So yeah, PR. There we go.
No, I totally agree with you. I think I feel the same way. Like, I think my initial reaction when I think of great man, and I'm thinking of like people that we see in media, there are a few like men that come to mind, and then like you kind of sit and think about it and you're like, nah, are you really great?
Right.
But yeah, I definitely agree with you that like it is kind of like you second guess, you know, their motives and their intention. Not to say that there aren't like qualities about people that we see in media that can be great. Like there are people in media that, you know, can be empathetic, that are compassionate, that make good leaders, and those kinds of things. But I guess that doesn't necessarily, those things without the others of, you know, honesty and
Right.
and maybe even humility and all that kind of stuff, without having all of those together, I don't think it necessarily makes them, you know, a great man.
Because also I think another aspect of being a great man is not letting like worldly possessions like change your morals and ethics and things like that. Because going back to what we said about social media, I feel like because a lot of those people came from humble beginnings, you know what I'm saying? A lot of people came from like very low income neighborhoods and stuff like that, and came up through social media, and now they're like a superstar or whatever, but now they're completely different. They're completely changed because of the money, the status, the cars, the houses, you know what I'm saying? So I feel like being just a great person, man or woman, is really, really heavily dependent on your reactions to anything, including like the world providing you like monetary stuff and anything like that. And also like I said before, the way people treat you and how you treat other people because of that. You know,
I think even saying that is like, part of me agrees with you,
right?
But also part of me is just like, if we had gotten rid of social media, and let's say they had all these nice things, because there's men in the Bible that, you know, I don't necessarily want to say well off, but they were doing well, you know, for themselves, and maybe, you know, they have a moment of downfall where they're like, you're not, you know, maybe they had a moment like that, but does that necessarily mean that they're not great?
Right.
Which is kind of, you know, going back to what we're talking about, is how like a great man does not always, you know, necessarily mean that they are perfect.
Without fault, yeah.
Right? A great man, without fault. So let's get into, you know, the scripture. And I kind of wanted us to talk about David, because, you know, whenever you speak about David, and then a few of the other people that we're going to talk about today, you always think of all the great and amazing things that they did, and specifically for this story that David did, and how he was a great warrior. Immediately what comes to mind is David and Goliath, and all the great things that David did as an Israelite during his time, during his life. But, you know, great men do mess up, because man is not without fault. So we're going to go to 2 Samuel, and we're going to go down to chapter 11. And, you know, you guys get your Bibles and read along with us.
Oh, and if you heard anything that you liked, put the 5s and the 7s in the chat. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and, you know, what makes a great man? What qualities make a great man, you know, to you guys? Like let us know.
Yes.
If there's something that we haven't said, or something that you, like, really agree with, let us know in the chat. You know, what you think, what your input is. Yeah, so let's go to 2 Samuel. We're in chapter 11. And we're going to start at verse 1. All right. So just for a little bit of context, this is after Israel had, you know, wanted a king. This is after we got out of Egypt. This is after all of that, right? Because we're talking about David. And at the time, Israel had just finished being at war with the Syrians. Okay. So 2 Samuel chapter 11, verse 1. And it came to pass, after the year was expired, so this is a year after that battle. And it came to pass, after the year was expired, at the time when kings go forth to battle, that David sent Joab and his servants with him, and all Israel, and they destroyed the children of Ammon and besieged Rabbah. But David tarried still at Jerusalem. And it came to pass in an evening tide that David arose from off his bed and walked upon the roof to the king's house. So let's stop right there for a second. So let's just paint the picture. So we're going back to war with the children of Ammon, who is who we were at war with in the previous chapter. And again, if you guys have time, I would definitely go back and read chapter 10. And even read back further just to get a little bit more context of like what was going on. So in that chapter, we had just beat the Syrians, and the Syrians were helping the children of Ammon. And the reason why we destroyed the Syrians was because we didn't want them to do that, and so they stopped doing that. In chapter 19 of 10, it says, so the Syrians feared to help the children of Ammon anymore, right? So we're going back to war with them, or back to battle with them. But David had stayed in Jerusalem.
You mean in verse 19 of chapter 10?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I thought I said that. And so David is back at home, right? And he's getting off his king bed, right? So like paint the picture in your head, right? And from the roof he saw a woman washing herself. And the woman was very beautiful to look at. So let's imagine, like, you're chilling, right? You know, you can't sleep one night, and you see, right, you're minding your own business, and you see, you know, Rihanna through your window. You see, you know, the Beyonce through your window. You see, who else? Yara Shahidi. You see Zendaya, the Chloe Bailey, like these kinds of people, right? That kind of beauty is what you're seeing through your window, I guess, right? So chapter 3. And David sent and inquired after the woman, and one said, Is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? Right? So unfortunately, this woman is taken, right? And so David is being informed of this. So verse 4, and David sent messengers and took her, and she came in unto him, and he lay with her, for she was purified from her uncleanliness, and she returned unto her house. So they slept together, is what happened. And
after him getting the confirmation that this woman is taken.
Right, she was married. Verse 5, and the woman conceived and sent and told David and said, I am with child. So she's pregnant. Verse 6, and David sent to Joab, saying, Send me Uriah the Hittite. And Joab sent Uriah to David. And when Uriah was come unto him, David demanded of him how Joab did, and how the people did, and how the war prospered. And David said unto Uriah, Go down to thy house, and wash thy feet. And Uriah departed out of the king's house, and there followed him a mess of meat from the king. So David's kind of being, you know, a little, what's the word I'm looking for? He's kind of being a little two-faced, right? Because he just laid with this man's wife, and now she's pregnant, and he's coming and he's talking to him. He's like, how's the war? You know, like, how are we doing? He's like, man, you should go home, wash your feet, like, relax. And then he sends him all this meat. He's like, you know, enjoy yourself, right? Okay. Verse 9, but Uriah slept at the door of the king's house with all the servants of his lord, and went not down to his house. And when they had told David, saying, Uriah went not down unto his house, David said unto Uriah, Camest thou not from thy journey? Why then didst thou not go down into thine house? So David is kind of trying to, you know, cover his tracks, right? Because, you know, if he goes down into his house, you know, after war, after battle, a man wants to go home, be with his wife. Right. He wants to relax, you know, eat a good meal. And so David is doing this in the hopes of, you know, Uriah to lay with his wife. And then, you know, David would be in the clear. Nobody needs to know anything happened.
Right.
You know, I'm chilling, you're chilling, no harm, no foul, kind of, right? 11, and Uriah said unto David, the ark and Israel and Judah abide in tents, and my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are encamped in the open fields. Shall I then go into my house to eat and to drink and to lie with my wife? As thou livest, and as thou soul liveth, I will not do this thing. So Uriah is like, it's not fair for me to go home and relax and, be merry and joyful when, all my people, all my homies are out at battle, right? The ark is there, all my soldiers are there. Like, it doesn't make sense. Right. It doesn't make sense for me to go and just be relaxing while they're all still fighting this battle. So let's go down to verse 12. And David said to Uriah, tarry here today also and tomorrow, and I will let thee depart. So Uriah abode in Jerusalem that day and the morrow. And when David had called him, he did eat and drink before him, and he made him drunk. And at even he went out to lie on his bed with the servants of his Lord, but went not down to his house. And it came to pass in the morning that David wrote a letter to Joab, and sent it by the hand of Uriah. And he wrote in the letter, saying, set ye Uriah at the forefront of the hottest battle, and retire ye from him, that he may be smitten and die. So again, David is still trying to cover his tracks, trying to get Uriah to go home and be with his wife, and Uriah is not having it. So he sends a note down to basically, and it's kind of messed up that he sent Uriah with the letter, right?
Yeah.
Because Uriah is just like, I'm just doing this thing for my king, and in this note is like, it's his death note.
Right.
And so Uriah gets placed in the front of the battle, and, David's hope is that he dies. And so, where were we?
I think we're at 16.
16. And it came to pass, when Joab observed the city, that he assigned Uriah unto a place where he knew the valiant men were. Right? So you want to be at the front with the valiant men, right? The men that are willing to die for their families, that are willing to die for the nation. That's where you want to be, with the valiant men. Mm-hmm. And the men of the city went out and fought with Joab, and there fell some of the people of the servants of David, and Uriah the Hittite died also. So Uriah is now dead. And so we're gonna skip down to 26, right? So David learns that Uriah is dead, and so does his wife Bathsheba. So in 26 it says, and when the wife of Uriah heard that Uriah her husband was dead, she mourned for her husband. And when the mourning was past, David sent and fetched her to his house, and she became his wife, and bare him a son. But the thing that David had done displeased the Lord.
You know what I'm thinking about when I'm when I'm reading this? It's like, Bathsheba's like kind of a snake low key, because like, even though David's the king and whatnot, and he was like, I want to lay with you, her husband just died, and she's just like, okay, I guess I'll just be with David now. Like,
but you can't judge people for how they want to mourn.
I guess, but...
And honestly, like, really, this is on David.
Yeah.
Right?
Wait, does Bathsheba know that?
No.
No?
So really, this is on David. Because... First of all, if he went and sent for her the first time. Right. So
after spying.
So if he went and sent for her, like, are you gonna say no to the king?
Right. Yeah, that's what. Nah.
So she went, and then she learns that her husband's dead. So now she's a widow. And so David wants her. She's like, okay, well, now I could get, another husband, or at least be, his concubine, something. But of course, David, ends up wifing her.
That's terrible.
But David does all this knowing what he did, because when he first called for her, he knew that that Bathsheba was married.
He made sure that he knew. He made sure that he just didn't care.
He knew. And then he went out of his way to try and, you know, kind of cover up, you know, what he did
multiple times
by having Uriah go home, but Uriah, you know, wasn't having it, and then he went and killed him. So this is on David for real.
Killed a
he's the one that messed up.
Patriotic
and
man.
It says, but the thing that David had done displeased the Lord. Right? So he messed up. Even though David is this great man, like, you know, he did this act of the flesh and he messed up. Like, that was wrong. That was wrong of him to do. And I'm sure, you know, with some self-awareness, you know, he understands that he was wrong, right? Okay. So, I want to kind of go into the way that David kind of handled this, because it says that the Lord was displeased with David. But I kind of wanted to go on a little bit further into chapter 12 and kind of talk about the repercussions of his action, right? Because there's no action without consequence. So we're going to go into chapter 12. And so we'll read from verse 1. And the Lord sent Nathan unto David, and he came unto him and said unto him, There were 2 men in one city, the one rich and the other poor. The rich man had exceeding many flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing, save one little ewe lamb, which he had bought and nourished up. And it grew up together with him, and with his children it did eat of his own meat, and drank of his own cup, and lay in his bosom, and was unto him as a daughter. And there came a traveler unto the rich man, and he spared to take of his own flock and of his own herd, to dress for the wayfaring man that was come unto him, but took the poor man's lamb, and dressed it for the man that was come to him. So Nathan is kind of giving him, you know, like a parable, right? He's you know, making up this story to kind of put in perspective of what David just did, right?
Using animals.
Right.
Which is like kind of weird that he has to put it in a sense of, okay, these are animals, to understand how he did this human act to another human that resulted in his death, you know?
But even like, it's just like, even when we talk about Jesus, like Jesus speaks in a lot of, you know, parables. Because sometimes, like, you know, you may mess up and, like, you can justify to yourself the mess up, right? So, like, if I was David...
Like, how would you justify that mess up if you were David?
If I was David, like, I can see why he did... he wanted Uriah to go home. He was like, maybe I could just cover this up.
Right.
You know, nobody needs, you know, to know about this. You know, this child can be raised as, you know, Uriah's. So I could see why he did that. But even after, you know, Uriah died, I guess to kind of like...
Yeah, but even after that, he still didn't have the hindsight to think, oh, I just did this to another human being, you know what I'm saying?
But I think he was still trying to, like, you know, justify the act, right? Because in a sense, you know, you could see where he's like, I'm the king. Like, I could do what I want, in a sense.
That's fair. And see, that goes again into the great man thing, not having worldly possessions influence your morals and ethics. I don't, you know... I understand that being a king means that you rule over your people, you know what I'm saying? You have, like, dominion over them and all that. But I feel like that shouldn't give you the right to be able to pass judgment on people, you know what I'm saying? Or just to take, because you are also human, you know? And then that goes into that same empathy thing that we were just talking about as well. Like, if you can't put yourself in that other person's situation... You know, if you can't communicate with them and just be honest, be like, okay, I'm the king, and I let me be real with you, I slept with your wife, you know, and
okay,
you know,
and as people that are just reading this, and we're not, you know, the people in it, you know, we're not actually living this situation, we can say that, right? Because we can look at it from an outside perspective. If I was to put myself in David's shoes. It's kind of weird. But if I was to put myself in David's shoes, right? Like, I could see why he's like, you know, if he just goes and sleeps with his wife, then I'm absolved of any responsibility here. Right? And in that moment, I think it's fair to say that, you know, David was probably just looking for a way to handle the situation, like, what is it? Like, confidentially? Is that the word? But like not have it be a big thing, not have, you know, everybody knowing, you know, maybe you don't want like all the servants murmuring and then, you know, the brethren find out or whatever.
Wait, wasn't it one of the servants that had told him that Bathsheba was... So they would know. You gotta cover the tracks again.
But the thing is like, also like servants probably aren't gonna go spilling David's business.
Well,
but maybe in the hands of the wrong servant. Right. So, anyways, I'm saying that to say, like, you know, David is trying to keep this hush-hush. And if he could get rid of this situation... Because how does it look if Bathsheba's like, I, you know, was with David and now I'm pregnant with his baby, and Uriah comes home and he's like, when I came home, I never even was with you. So how does that make sense? And so... if he's trying to cover that up, I could see why he would be like, oh, you just came back from battle, go be with your wife. And then as long as Uriah does that, he's absolved of the situation. Right?
Yeah, I understand, yeah.
So if you're in that situation, I could see why he would do that. Maybe not go as far as to kill Uriah, but again, he is the king with that kind of power. And maybe that was an abuse of power. Right? And he killed Uriah. But even after all of that, he went and made Bathsheba his wife. And so maybe he's like, well...
So would you say that could be perceived as like an honorable act? You know what I'm saying? Like making her an honest woman?
I think that was probably his way of trying to do that. Right? Because like even now, like if, you know, a young girl gets pregnant, it's like, okay, or if somebody gets pregnant and you're not like married to, you know, your spouse, you're like, okay, well maybe you guys should go and get married so that you can have the baby in a marriage.
Right.
So like that was probably David's way of being like, okay, well, Uriah's dead, I'll marry her and, you know, let her be my wife, and so maybe that will, you know, fix the wrong that I did.
Or maybe it's like he's being vain and he's saying, okay, now that he's dead, I can have this beautiful woman all to myself.
I mean, that's possible. I don't think that, knowing what we know of David, I don't think that.
I'm just saying, like,
that's also that's you know, possible. So Nathan is telling him this, and I think it's more so to get him to get out of the thought process of being like, how do I remedy this situation? How do I fix this? Like, how do I keep this under wraps and, you know, not make this a big deal or whatever the case may be? And get into, okay, well, now that, you know, this is done, like, let me tell you this story and be like, can you now see from the perspective of, you know, the traveler and the rich man and the poor man, can you now see from that perspective who was wrong?
Right. And,
you know, David being self-aware is like, I am the rich man. Right? Okay.
We were at
5. Okay. And David's anger was greatly kindled against the man. And he said to Nathan, as the Lord liveth, the man that hath done this thing shall surely die. So even in that, you can see how David is seeing this story and is like, oh my gosh, that is wrong.
Right, that's terrible.
Right.
He should die.
Because it says his anger was greatly kindled against this man. When the man is him. Right? And he's saying the man that had done this thing shall surely die. So he knows that this is a wrong thing. I just don't think he's gotten to the point where he's like, I am the man. Right. So 6, and he shall restore the lamb fourfold. So this is David still speaking. And he shall restore the lamb fourfold, because he did this thing, and because he hath no pity. And Nathan said to David, thou art the man.
Exactly.
Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, I anoint thee king over Israel, and I delivered thee out of the hand of Saul. And I gave thee thy master's house, and thy master's wife into thy bosom, and gave thee the house of Israel and of Judah. And if that had been too little, I would moreover have given unto thee such and such things. Wherefore hast thou despised the commandment of the Lord, to do evil in his sight? Thou hast killed Uriah the Hittite with the sword, and hast taken his wife to be thy wife, and hast slain him with the sword of the children of Ammon. Now therefore the sword shall never depart from thine house, because thou hast despised me, and hast taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be thy wife. Thus saith the Lord, behold, I will raise up evil against thee out of thine own house, and I will take thy wives before thine eyes, and I will give them unto thy neighbor. And he shall lie with thy wives in the sight of this sun. For thou didst it secretly, but I will do these things before all Israel and before the sun. And David said unto Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. And Nathan said unto David, the Lord also hath put away thy sin, thou shalt not die. Howbeit, because by this deed thou hast given great occasion to the enemies of the Lord to blaspheme, the child also that is born unto thee shall surely die. And Nathan departed unto his house, and the Lord struck the child that Uriah's wife bare unto David, and it was very sick. So again, no action goes unpunished, right? And you can see how David
kind of lamented and stuff.
How David, he kind of becomes self-aware through the help of Nathan, right? And so, again, this is not to say that David wasn't a great man, but he messed up. And sometimes great men mess up. But that doesn't, completely take away. Right. It doesn't take away from him being a great man. There are still great things that he did for Israel, for the God of Israel. But he messed up, and because of that, he needed to be punished. There needed to be some kind of consequence, and unfortunately, that consequence was that, the child that Bathsheba bare for him had to die. And even if you continue to read on a little bit more, it says that even when the child was sick, David was praying, and he wasn't eating. He was fasting the whole time that the child was sick. And then once he found out that, the child died, he finally ate again and stopped fasting. And that was even to be like, maybe the God of Israel would have some, mercy on me for what I did. And then once the child died, just accepting the consequence of his actions.
I think it's very good of David that even after his child died, even after the praying and the fasting and all that he didn't curse the God of Israel's name and kind of do away with all that because of his child's death. So that was it wasn't, I'm not going to say very high road of him, even though that is the right terminology, but I feel like in this situation, I wouldn't use that term. I just feel like it was good of David to do that.
I think again, I think sometimes we talk about the God of Israel he, we were made in his likeness and image, right? And so those same emotions, which is why I really like, talking about the God of Israel, he is, a father, we refer to him as the father, and all that. But even as a father, you build up credit, right? And David did all those things. He beat Goliath. He went to war for the God of Israel. He wanted to build a temple, even though he couldn't, but all of these things, David built up the credit. And, unfortunately, he just spent a little too much. And he's like, all right, well, you know, now you got a fee on your account. And you got to pay back the $35 overdraft fee, right? So yeah. I think, you know, that's the case here. Like the God of Israel, I don't want to say he's merciful, right?
Right.
So I don't think that, you know, this mistake that David made, or this, you know, action that wasn't right, was going to negate all of the other things that he did.
Right, of course.
You know?
Well, I wouldn't say of course, but, you know, it didn't.
Right. So I think for those reasons, it's unfortunate that this child had to die, but, you know, you had to, I guess, pay the price for your actions, right? Just how, like, if you go and rob a bank...
And get caught.
Right.
Yeah. I'm just...
And you go to jail. You know? Yeah. And so for those reasons, but even still, even with, you know, what David did, he was still a great man. And that's the point, is that, you know, a great man can mess up on occasion. But that doesn't take away from his greatness. At least I don't think. You know, once the self-awareness comes in, and the humility and the understanding, which if you guys do get a chance, I really encourage you to finish reading out, you know, chapter 12. Just to see, like, you know, what the rest of the story was like, and what, you know, happened in greater detail. But yeah, that is, I really enjoy that story. And I think, you know, for myself, the first time that, like, I read the story in detail and it wasn't just, like, verbally told to me, I was going through, like, my own situation where I'm like, oh my God, I'm a horrible person because, you know, I did this thing, and now every good thing that I've done has been negated and is covered up by this, you know, one horrible thing that I did, you know? And I think, you know, for me, reading this came at that time where I was just like, I can still be, like, a good person. I could still be, you know, a good Israelite, even though I did mess up. Right?
So after reading this story, let me ask you this. What do you think a good man looks like? A good man looks like from a woman's perspective.
I think, you know, a good man has all those qualities of even a great man, right? So, like, a good man is, you know, compassionate. I think, you know, the more that I think about it, the difference between a good man and a great man is, I guess, scale.
Scale?
And I say that to say, like, for me, my future husband could be a good man, right? And in my eyes, maybe he could be a great man. But as far as scale, like, maybe he's not a good man to the person that he works with. Or, you know, maybe he's not a great man to his boss, or, you know, whatever the case may be. But I think...
So you think it's as much scale as it is perspective?
I think part of it is scale. Just because, you know, when we think, or at least for me, I don't mean to add you into my thought, but for me, at least when I think of great men, I think a lot of them are leaders in some way, shape, or form. Right? And it's not like the leader of the household. So for me, my future husband would be like a great man because he is, you know, the leader of my household and whatever. But then that's just me. Like, I just think he's a great man because in my smaller scale of my home, he's a good leader. And I think when it comes to other people that we talk about, like David and Daniel and Moses, like, these people, whether they chose to or not, whether they did it purposefully or not, they were good leaders to the masses in a way, right? And so...
And then that goodness turned into them being perceived as
great
man. Right.
And, like, even, like, there may be men during this time that they did many good things and maybe even had the same qualities as David, but because they weren't on such a big a scale, their story isn't
in the Bible.
Right, a story that we read about and go, oh my gosh, he's great, you know?
Jackson was so cool.
Right. So, you know, for that, like maybe in that person's household, they were great, but I think the scale of leadership, because I think leading a large amount of people is difficult, right? Because you're dealing with a bunch of personalities. There's going to be people in there that are like totally for you, like, yeah, let's do it, we back you 100%. There are people that are going to be totally against you, and then there's going to be those people that are in the middle that are doubting you. And to be a good leader, you kind of have to convince the majority, at least, to be like, yeah, this person is good for this role to lead, you know?
Right.
So what about you? What do you think makes a good man in your perspective?
Shoot. You know, I asked you that question, and I was like, oh, wow, this is going to be really good for you to answer, because I feel like you have a good answer. And I'm not really thinking about it myself. But, yeah, I feel like I agree with you that being a good man is pretty much the same as being a great man. But it's more, you could say it's more personal. It's more like you would say, there's a good man in your family, like you said, is about scale. Like I agree with your points on that, on that front. So the same as a great man, the same empathy, the same like ability to show love to other people, to be compassionate and all that stuff, all those qualities, but just in not a lesser man, maybe less important, I guess, right? To the like grand scheme of things, like to like, let's say your community, you know, like your neighbor could be great, you know, to his family, but you wouldn't know. You could be like, oh, that's just Jack over there, you know what I'm saying? He's cool, but then to his wife, that's her world, that's her everything. That's a great man, you know what I'm saying? Father of my children, stuff like that. So yeah, so being a great man and being a good man could be interchangeable depending on who you're talking about and the relation that you have personally to that person. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so you want to move on to our next scripture.
Next story that we're going to read is going to be Moses and the Rock, and that is going to be Numbers 20. And I will start.
So while you're looking for that, so for a little bit of context, this is after Israel comes out of Egypt, right? And we're free from Pharaoh, and we're in the wilderness, and the people are kind of like, how are we, you know, gonna eat? How are we gonna drink? How are we gonna survive, you know, in this wilderness, right?
Okay, so chapter 20, Numbers, verse 1. Then came the children of Israel, even the whole congregation, into the desert of Zin in the first month. And the people abode in Kadesh, and Miriam died there and was buried there. And there was no water for the congregation. And did you have something to say?
No, go ahead.
And there was no water in the congregation. And they gathered themselves together against Moses and against Aaron. So, I just want to say that these are very flip-floppy people that we're talking about. They, in the previous chapters, they were very loyal. They were like, oh, wow, you guys are great. Moses and Aaron, top-notch, you know what I'm saying? And now that there's no water, now that I'm hungry, I'm thirsty.
Now they're doubting.
Now they're like,
they're quick to doubt.
Y'all suck. Y'all have not done anything for us, you know? So yeah, that's just the situation that we're in right now. Very flip-floppy people. And the people chode? Yeah, with Moses and spake, saying, Would God that we had died when our brethren died before the Lord? And why have ye brought up the congregation of the Lord into the wilderness, that we and our cattle should die there? And wherefore have ye made us to come up out of Egypt to bring us unto this evil place? It is no place of seed or of figs or of vines or of pomegranates, neither is any water to drink. So, like I said, as again, just to paint the picture, this is a very desert-like area. Well, not desert, it's a wilderness. But in this wilderness, there is no fruits that are edible that they know of, and they're starving. And this is a big group that we're talking about. A big group. They all just came out of Egypt. So think about all the slaves that were in Egypt, all the Israelites that were enslaved, and they all crossed the Red Sea. So now there's this big group of people in the wilderness, and naturally, when there's negative emotion with one person, that will just spread and then grow and then multiply and
even I want to make the connection of like how we see a lot of people going to jail, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they come out of jail, don't know what to do with themselves, and they're like, let me just go back to jail.
Right.
And so in a sense, Israel is kind of doing this, right? Where they get out of Egypt, they were begging and pleading and crying out to the God of Israel to get out of Egypt. They finally get out with Moses, and then they're like, how are you going to feed us?
Exactly.
Where is the water at, Moses? Like, what are we doing?
The pomegranates.
And now you're thinking back to jail, right, to Egypt, and you're like, well, at least in jail I had a hot meal every day. At least in jail I had a bed to sleep in, and now out here in the world I gotta find a bed, I gotta go find a job to pay my rent and pay for groceries. Let me just go back to jail, because that's, the easy way. And so in a sense they're kind of doing that. Let us just go back to Egypt, because at least we was getting something. Like, right. Here, like, you brought us out here to die. Right?
We are in verse 6, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and they fell onto their faces, and the glory of God appeared unto them. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Take the rod, and gather thou thy assembly together, thou and Aaron thy brother, and speak ye unto the rock before their eyes. And it shall give forth his water, and thou shalt bring forth to them water out of the rock. So shalt give the congregation and their beasts drink.
So, sorry to cut you off.
No, you're fine.
But verse 8 is very important, right? It says, Take the rod, and gather thou the assembly together, thou and Aaron thy brother, and speak ye unto the rock before their eyes. Right? That instruction is very important.
It said speak.
Okay, you can continue.
Verse 9. And Moses took the rod from before the Lord, as he commanded him. And Moses and Aaron gathered the congregation together before the rock. And he said unto them, Hear now, ye rebels, must we fetch you water out of this rock? And Moses lifted up his hand, and with his rod he smote the rock twice. And the water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank, and their beasts also.
Right. So Moses was so angry towards the congregation of Israel because there's so much doubt, right? Mm-hmm. There's so much doubt in the Lord, so much doubt that, the God of Israel would bring them out here, or for them, their leader to look at is Moses. Moses would bring them out here to just die, and that anger. And so instead of following the instruction of speaking to the rock, Moses went and smote it twice with his rod.
Twice, 2 times.
Right?
Not even once.
Where are we? 12?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron, Because ye believe me not to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore ye shall not bring this congregation into the land which I have given them. So the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron to be... Okay, so basically this is the Lord saying that Moses and Aaron, you obviously did not follow my instruction.
Mm-hmm.
Bad. Not
and
good.
So now you're not going to see the promised land because of it.
Mm-hmm. Repercussions.
Mm-hmm.
There's repercussions for all the actions that we take. And yeah, that's the moral of that.
Mm-hmm.
We're on 13. This is the water of Meribah, because the children of Israel strove with the Lord, and he was sanctified in them. And
so you can stop there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so again, another example of how, you make a mess up, and there has to be some kind of consequence for it. unfortunately, in this case, Moses wasn't going to be able to see the promised land because he didn't follow the instruction. But again, that doesn't take away from Moses being a great man, because this is still the same Moses that, was a shepherd. And he...
Same Moses that killed a man.
Yeah. And he came and brought Israel out of the land of Egypt. And he was the one that, led them through the dry land with water up on both sides as walls, right? And so that is, the thing that we remember Moses for, is just a part of his story, is that he did mess up, he did make a mistake, and he didn't follow the instruction.
Even if it was anger on behalf of the God of Israel.
Right.
It was not the instruction.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that every man has, like, the potential to be great in this sense? Because Moses was just a shepherd, right? So
he was a regular guy.
Does every man have the potential?
I feel like every man does have the potential, but also a part of me feels like even before you're born, I feel like you're chosen to have a specific kind of life. This is just my philosophy personally. I feel like everybody has already a path laid out for them, their destiny, their fate, and they follow that path as they live and grow. And so everybody has the possibility. Everybody has a possibility to be given a role of importance that could possibly make them great, or they could fail terribly, But yeah, everybody has the potential, so in my opinion.
What do you think that thing is that becomes, their downfall? Is it like just free will, or maybe disobedience?
I feel like obviously with the way that I think that fate and destiny are like definite things, that this is going to be like a little like, but I don't think that people really have free will per se, because Moses was chosen, right? And could he really have said no? Was that his destiny? Was he destined to do what he did? Think about that. Or his brother, or Miriam, bringing him back to Egypt to do what he had to do. All the people in his life are playing specific roles, the paths that they're following, leading Moses to his goal where he is right now. So I feel like in that sense, that free will doesn't really exist, because everything is leading you down a specific path to a checkpoint, I feel like, and then it just keeps on branching out into different ways. So wait, what was the question again?
Like, what would be like the downfall? The downfall? Right. So like, you're saying that every man feels like destined, or their fate, or their purpose is to be great from the beginning. Right. So like, is there a downfall there that could happen where it's like, okay, well, this was your path, and now...
Well, yeah, it's like I said before, everybody has the potential, and then people that are also in your life help you to follow that path that you were meant for. But the people that are in your life can also deter you from that path. And so if you have, let's say, who's a deterring, you could say like Moses' half brother, that was the prince. I guess you could say he's kind of a deterring factor, in the sense that, well, no, I don't think I could really say that.
I think when I think of like a deterring factor, like a person like coming into your life that's not, I guess, aligned with your destiny per se, or aligned with your purpose. I think of like Samson.
Right. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
And how he mingled with somebody that he shouldn't have, and that unfortunately cost him. Or even like in your life, like not all company is good company, right? So like,
but you don't want to have that assumption that, okay, because not all company is good company, I'm just going to stay away from all company. You know what I'm saying? You still have to go out and make
I'm not saying that. I'm saying more so as like a person, you have to have the quality of like being a good person, right? Where you can, decipher like
have a good judgment.
Yeah, like is this person helping me or hindering me, right? Because I know, I don't know if this is like a Caribbean saying or whatever, but like, I don't know if you heard this when you were growing up, but I heard a lot like, show me your 5 closest friends and I'll tell you who you are.
I think I've heard that once from Mom.
Right. So it's kind of like that same kind of thing. Like you have to have the good judgment to be like, is this, the company that I want to keep? Because let's say you're good, you're getting straight A's, you're, getting into a top college, or whatever the case may be, right? And then your friend is like
a bum,
right? Or he's like, getting involved with the wrong kind of people, or he's doing things that he shouldn't be doing. Like now you're associated with that person,
exactly.
And so even if your intention was never to do the things that person is doing, because of the way that they're moving and how they are like carrying themselves, like now let's say you get into a situation where you're out driving with that person in the car, you get pulled over, there's drugs in the car, right? And so now just by association you have
messed up your destiny.
Exactly.
Right.
And now your purpose is pause maybe, or
you're fake it in right there.
Yeah.
That cop could kill you.
That's also possible.
Yeah.
That is also possible. Yeah, so, you have to kind of beware of the company you keep in a sense.
Right.
So even when I think about that, that's kind of how I view it.
Do you think the company you keep can deter you from being a good / great man or woman?
Yeah. I think it can. I think, at least, as an Israelite, I think one of the things we pride ourselves on is, our spirituality. And I think if you're getting into things that especially interfere with you and your relationship, with your brethren, or you and your relationship with the God of Israel, I think that can be a hindrance, and potentially could be something that kind of like severs the tie between those relationships.
Right.
So I do think it can affect you from being great, or affect you from being, a good person or a good man or a good woman. Yeah, nice. I do.
Wait, I want to ask you because I know I gave an answer to that one, but does everyone have the potential to be a good man? I want to hear your answer for that one.
I think everyone has the potential, yeah. I kind of like your answer, like you, in a way you don't, but I also think in a way you do, right? Because the God of Israel did give us free will. So, hypothetically, if I wanted to, get up and just be like, I don't want to be involved with Israel ever again, I could do that.
Because you have free will.
Right. But who's to say that the God of Israel won't still be involved in my life, still be leading me back to Israel, because I may have some purpose that I don't know about.
Right.
Right? I could be the next Moses.
Right.
Right. So like I don't know. So I think in a sense it's kind of like both. Like there will probably be some kind of consequence if I was to hypothetically like leave Israel. There's going to be some kind of consequence, whether that's me struggling financially or whatever the case may be, right? I'm losing relationships because I've known Israel my whole life. So whatever the case may be, there's going to be some kind of consequence for that, for me falling off, the path, for me I guess putting a pause or stopping, me from reaching my purpose.
Right.
But if I was meant to be used, then who's to say I wouldn't be led back to the path? Because even with Moses, right, he left Egypt and was going to live out, you know, the rest of his days being a shepherd until he came in contact with the burning bush. And he was like, hey, you got a job to do, you know? So who's to say I'm not like, I'm going to go live in, you know, Antarctica and be by myself
for like a year.
Who's to say I'm not going to, you know, come across my burning bush, you know? So yes, I think every man has the potential. But yes, I think there could be things that kind of deter you. And maybe if that wasn't my purpose, maybe if there was, you know, somebody else that could fulfill that purpose, maybe the God of visual, you know, does use that person. And, you know, I'll get my judgment, you know, after I pass, you know, and I leave my physical body.
Knowing that everybody has like the potential to be a great man, and having free will and whatnot, do you feel that you feel pressure to be perfect or be great, or to try to follow that purpose, you know, like intently strive to it, even though you don't know exactly what it is?
I think it's a goal for sure. I don't know if I necessarily feel pressure in a sense, but I can see where there is pressure to be perfect.
Right.
Even if that's just you putting the pressure upon yourself, and that's not coming from like outwardly, like from, you know,
friends, family,
you know, aunties, uncles, your parents, or whatever. But I think even, you know, because I want to be the best Israelite that I can be, right? And so in order to do that, like, I want to be, you know, as perfect as I can be in the sight of the God of Israel. Of course I'm going to mess up. Like, David was amazing. He was a great man. And I expect myself to not mess up, you know? But I think, at least for myself, like, I don't want to say pressure myself, but I try my best to be as perfect as I can. You know, every man is not without sin, but I try my best, right? And I think, you know, with that intention, and with me wanting to find what my purpose is, even if I know what my purpose for the moment is, like, I'm sure I have some kind of other purpose that I haven't found out yet. You know, the journey of finding that, the want to find that, is more motivation, rather than pressure to be, you know, good.
I like that answer. So,
what about you?
Oh, same question?
Do you feel pressure to be perfect?
I feel like, you know, as a child, I felt it more. And then, you know, growing up, I made like several mistakes, you know what I'm saying? And so now that, like, I could like look back and be like in hindsight, you know what I'm saying? And then go back to scripture and read stories like these, or people make mistakes, but they can still be great and good men. I feel like I don't feel it as much as I did before, because now I feel like I could carry myself in a way that is like, okay, I know that it might be a bumpy road, and I know I might make a mistake here or there, but I feel like I'm going to get to my destination no matter what, you know what I'm saying? I feel like I'm destined for it. It's my fate, you know? So I feel like having faith in that, and knowing that there is a purpose for me, and knowing that the path that I'm on is the right one, then I feel like that relieves some of the pressure, and that, like you said, becomes more motivation for me to continue doing what I'm doing, and just to strive for greater heights. So yeah.
I think at the end of the day, like, your purpose comes down to serving the God of Israel, and, you know, being a good brethren, being a good, you know, daughter, honoring your parents, following the law, statutes, and commandments. And as long as you're doing those things, and you're doing all the work and putting in the work to, you know, keep and create that relationship with the God of Israel and with your brethren, then, you know, I feel like that's, you know, a good base point, you know. Okay, I think we have a little bit more time to go into one more story. So we're going to go to 1 Kings.
1 Kings chapter 11.
And then you want to read? We're going to read 1 to 11. So we're 1 Kings 11. We're going to start at 1.
Okay, while I'm flipping through these pages, I also wanted to ask, because Israel is so, embedded in your life, and it is, a very serious point, and you're, you want to, spread it to your family and stuff like that, and your friends, and you want to shout it from the highest mountain and whatever. So, I wanted to ask you, what do you think is the mark of a good Israelite besides their spirituality?
I think it comes down to I guess a cultural standpoint, because of course our spirituality is important, and I think that tends more to our relationship with the God of Israel,
Right.
And then our culture is kind of our way to be good Israelites to each other, right? So it's in our culture to celebrate each other's victories, right? It's our culture to be with each other when we're mourning or when we're going through something. It's part of our culture to pray together. It's part of our culture to feast together, and those kinds of things. So I think outside of the spirituality, which I'm kind of assigning that to your relationship with the God of Israel, I think your culture and the way you interact with your brethren and the people around you is, I guess, the other side to what being a good Israelite.
So just staying true to that
yeah
thing that...
I think they go hand in hand, right? You can't be spiritually in tune with the God of Israel if you're not in tune with your brethren, and vice versa, right? So I think that cultural aspect is just as important as being spiritually in tune with the God of Israel. And I think if one of those things is off, it's all gonna feel off,
Right.
Yeah.
I understand completely. Okay, so we are at 1 Kings 11. But King Solomon loved many strange women. That's a great way to start.
So a bit of context. Right now, King Solomon is over Israel. The temple is built, and that is kind of what King Solomon is known for. David could not build the temple, and that's what he wanted to do because he had too much blood on his hands. So that task was given to Solomon, and Solomon, as king, carried that out. And he was a great king, and he was a wise king. And so for those reasons, we know Solomon to be a great man, right? Go ahead, Micah.
Okay. But King Solomon loved many strange women, together with the daughter of Pharaoh, women of Moabites, children of the Moabites, Amorites, Edomites, Zidonians, and Hittites, of the nations concerning which the Lord said unto the children of Israel, Ye shall not go into them, neither shall they come unto you. For surely they will turn away your heart after their gods. Solomon clave unto these in love. And he had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart. Okay, I want to stop there.
So at the time, it was okay for men to have multiple wives.
But even if that is okay, 1,000? What? Really? 1,000? Really? That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Think of you cannot fit 1,000 women in one. You need a school for that. That's a school. He had a whole school of women. That's wildness. And all of different non-Israelite what do I want to say?
Cultures?
Cultures?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cultures. And obviously all their cultures and all their ideals and everything like that is going to be all around him, surrounding him all the time. And though he was a wise man, that does not make him exempt from being swayed this way or that way when everybody's always in his ear. 1,000 women are always in his ear This God is better. He can give you this. He can give you that.
And even if they weren't doing that, I think, men naturally, in a way, are kind of just, you're going to be inclined to what's around you, right? The same thing as like, show me, the 5 people you keep around, I'll tell you who you are.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you're keeping all this company that is essentially against what you're trying to do. And these women could be worshiping idols. They could be pretty much doing a bunch of things that are going against our commandments.
In his presence.
Right.
What are we on, 3? I mean,
4.
4,
yeah.
Okay. For it came to pass when Solomon was old that his wives turned away his heart after other gods. See what we mean? See what we mean? The idols, they were in his presence. And his heart was not perfect with the Lord his God, as was the heart of David his father. For Solomon went after Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Zidonians, and after Malcolm the
Abomination.
Oh my God! Wow, really? My brain just turned off. Malcolm, the abomination of the Amorites. And Solomon did evil in the sight of the Lord, and went not fully after the Lord, as did David his father. When did Solomon build an high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, in the hill that is before Jerusalem, and for Molech, the abomination of the children of Ammon. And likewise did he for all his strange wives, which burnt all of them. And likewise did he for all his strange wives, which burnt incense and sacrifice unto their gods. And the Lord was angry with Solomon, because his heart was turned from the Lord God of Israel, which had appeared unto him twice, and had commanded him concerning this thing, that he should not go after other gods. But he kept not that which the Lord commanded. Therefore the Lord said unto Solomon, Forasmuch as this is done of thee, and thou hast not kept my covenant and my statutes which I have commanded thee, I will surely rend the kingdom from thee, and will give it to thy servant. Now it.
And so, because of that, you can stop reading there.
Oh, okay.
And so you see, because of that was,
Mm.
Solomon's downfall, right? Because he did amazing things again, but women was his downfall, unfortunately. Yeah, and then again, that kind of goes back into, the company that you keep is so important, especially as an Israelite. I think even, to stand strong in the culture and in your spirituality, it's, unwise to surround yourself with so many other people that are not of the same mind, right? And so, you're not in unity, but you're mingling with, people, and not only just, people outside of the culture, but people that you were specifically told not to mingle with.
Right.
So, again, be careful of the company you keep. And I think, again, that goes back into, your relationships with your brethren are so important.
Right. Because note how he didn't say that any of the women that he canoodled with were Israelite women. So all the 1,000 women that he kept company with were all of different cultures, different nations, and they all influenced him to worship their gods. All of them. That's crazy. That's crazy. That is crazy. I wanted to ask you, what are the differences between the modern man and the ones that we see in the Bible, like Samson, Solomon, and Moses and David?
Well, I think for one, the modern man, I think, the further we get into, I guess, your generation, which is technically also my generation.
Kind of. Not really.
The further we get into the younger the man.
You're a millennial or Gen Z?
I'm technically Gen Z.
Oh.
Not technically, I am. But I think we see a lot of people becoming more and more straying from religion, and straying from
like biblical values and stuff.
In a sense, yeah. Because I know a lot of people are getting into the idea of spirituality, and maybe they're not going about it the correct way. But I do see
the Solomon way.
A lot of
polygamy.
Men kind of, if Christianity didn't work for them, I oftentimes find it that they don't seek something to, I guess, replace it in a sense. It's just like, oh, that didn't work. All right, so I'm not, religious.
Right.
I am not.
Atheist now.
Yeah, I'm an atheist. Maybe there's something out there, so I'll say I'm, agnostic, and that kind of thing. And I think that's, one of the big differences. I think a lot of men nowadays, especially when it comes in terms to like a great man, or even if that's on a smaller scale or a bigger scale, they're very afraid or hesitant to lead. And that could also be something that's just been, a result of racism, a result of slavery, a result of, so many black men specifically going to jail, and women having to take on the role of mother and father, and women having to be the person that takes the lead, the person that, becomes the head of the household. And so I think in those two senses, I'm seeing a lot of men straying away from what in my head would be a great man.
Do you think, like, because I feel like that goes under like their masculinity type thing, because naturally the natural role of a man is to provide for their family and stuff like that. And nowadays that's not happening as much, and fathers are leaving, women are raising children by themselves and stuff like that. Do you think that what was I gonna say? Oh, I think I lost my thought. I'm
okay.
sorry.
So while you're thinking about that, I wanted to ask you, do you think like a great man...
I remember. Sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Do you think that masculinity is like a parallel to being a great man or a good man?
I don't think so. I think naturally we associate a lot of good qualities with masculine, and I don't say anything. What I'm saying is that women have to take the lead of being head of the household and all of that stuff, and being mommy and daddy. As
in some cases,
yes, it's bad. The mommy and daddy part is bad, but I don't think taking the lead is necessarily a bad thing, right? Because in a household you have mom and dad. Sometimes dad is going to be taking the lead in a sense, but mom is there as the helpmate, right? And so she takes the lead when dad needs to figure something out, or if dad is away at battle, like mom is the one leading the house, making sure everything is okay,
right?
And so I think a lot of times when we speak of leadership and those kinds of things, we immediately associate it with masculine. And so because men don't want to take on that role, it takes I guess I'm trying to think of how I want to word this.
So okay, I was gonna say that you think the less masculine they are, the less potential or the less good or great of a man that they can
I'm
be.
not saying that. I'm saying that we associate things like leadership with being a masculine quality, right?
But that's not necessarily.
But it doesn't have anything to do with you being a man or a woman. Right? Because a man or a woman can lead. I just think like at the beginning, we were saying all these components, all these qualities make up a great man. And without these things, it takes away from the man being great. Without you being able to be self-aware, it takes away from you being able to be great. Without you being able to have good understanding, it takes away from you being able to be great. Without you being okay with leading, it takes away from you being great, right? Because you have to accept that in a way, you know?
Right.
David had to accept, like, he's now the king.
Right.
Same thing with Solomon. Moses had to accept that, you know, with me doing this, I'm going to be leading these people out of Egypt.
Right.
You know, Daniel had to accept that me refusing to eat the lobster and whatever, that the king was feeding us in captivity, that I'm going to be, you know, starting a revolution per se, you know? And so those components, if you don't have all those things, and you totally negate or neglect, you know, one of those qualities, it takes away from you being able to be great, right? So if a man is coming and they don't want to lead and they want to, you know, be home and play video games all day, don't want to take care of the kids, don't want to contribute, don't want to provide in any way, shape, or form, you know, whether that's in the form of being a stay-at-home dad or going out to work or whatever, if you don't want to contribute, you are hiding from being a leader, right?
Therefore,
you can't be a great man,
right?
You know?
Yeah.
So I think all of those things kind of, you have to have all of those qualities in some way, shape, or form in order to be great. And you can't be a great man without wanting to be, you know, a leader, or a great man without wanting to be self-aware. You know?
Yeah. I completely understand your point, and I agree with you.
Okay, so before you cut me off, I wanted to ask you, can you naturally be like a great man? Like, can you be born to be a great man, or is that something that needs to be nurtured?
I mean, I feel like that a little bit goes back to what we were saying about destiny, and how you could be destined to do great things. Like you already have a purpose, you know. But I feel like I said, the people in your life can either help you or deter you from that path. I feel like leaders great men, which can be leaders, are molded from their experience, and you know, just observing the world and the way that they perceive it can and it influences their actions in a positive way, and that could lead them to being a great man, or, well, at the very least, being a good man. So yeah, definitely molded. I feel like if you, without that person that to look up to, that role model, like a son and his father, or a mom and her daughter, you know what I'm saying? If you don't have that person to look up to, you don't have anything to model yourself after. You could just be like water and absorb everything else that is in the world, and sometimes that's not always good, you know. Without that father figure, without that mother figure, you could look towards somebody that deals drugs or something and be like, oh wow, he's providing for himself, he's providing for his family, but he's doing a not evil act, but he's doing something that's wrong. He's doing something that's illegal, and so you're gonna model yourself after that and think, oh, he was good, he's providing for his family, and think, okay, maybe I should do something like that in order to become a great or a good man. But that is not, you know, the case. So being molded is definitely the way for me personally, I think, to being a good man. And
let us know what you guys think in the comments. I think this is a great discussion that we've had here, Micah. And I'm hoping that you guys will chime in and let us know. And again, don't only comment in the live chat, but go comment at the bottom of this video so that we can keep this, you know, discussion going, keep talking about, you know, what it means to be a great man or a great person in Israel. And again, the point was that a great man can mess up, you know. A great man is not perfection, right? And I just want to read this verse really quick before we end. It's 1 Kings chapter 8, We're going to go to verse 38. It says, what prayer and supplication soever be made by any man, or by all thy people Israel, which shall know every man the plague of his own heart, and spread forth his hands toward this place, then hear thou in heaven thy dwelling place, and forgive, and do, and give to every man according to his ways, whose heart thou knowest. For thou, even thou only, knowest the hearts of all the children of men. And that's a little excerpt from Solomon's prayer to the God of Israel when he established the temple. Just to, again, like, asking for that forgiveness, that we have those times to pray to the God of Israel, and to atone for our sins, and be like, hey, we messed up, and the God of Israel is going to hear us and forgive us, because he is a merciful God. And again, even how this relates to your life and even our lives, like, there's going to be times where you mess up, and those things may weigh really heavy on you, but even to remember these stories, and remember these men, remember David, remember Moses, remember Solomon, and see that even these great men had, moments of being human where they messed up. They let their emotions get the best of them, or they let their flesh get the best of them. But you can still recover from that.
Right.
So I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson. I hope to see lots of comments at the end, lots of fires and sevens. And we will see you guys next week. And we will even see you tomorrow for our Saturday lesson. So peace, everyone.
Peace. Just look at the size. This more of us in a bit with them, so we all fight. Look at the clothes. I live like something like a ghost, rockin' all